What's up, guys? This is Ryan and Joey with Fearless Fantasy. Today we're going to do a quick video of Contrarian plays for 2023. So basically what we're going to be doing in this video is these aren't necessarily players we think are must drafts. We do like them at where they're being drafted at ADP, but we kind of just are looking for players that nobody really likes this year and doing the contrarian of that and seeing why they might be a great play. I've noticed this is a trend that's been happening the last 3 or 4 years in fantasy where people just start the season off and they just assume this player or that player, their situation is going to be awful, and everyone just rides that train up into the draft. And then once the season ends, you kind of realize, wow, we all just made a mistake, or why didn't we not see that? So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. Some examples of the last couple years, I vividly remember Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods year, where everybody, 90% of the population was adamant that Robert Woods, including myself, was going to be better than Cooper Kupp, and nobody thought to think, what if Cooper Kupp is going to be better than him? Not saying you would have predicted the year that he had, but just being able to see the other side and seeing what happens. Last year, the Seattle and Denver is another comp that I see. A lot of people just assume that Denver was going to be better and Russell Wilson was going to make them better, but we didn't stop to think and say, hey, maybe his weapons in Seattle were better and they were the ones making him good, and then vice versa with Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Everyone just assumed they were going to be bad and let guys like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and even Geno Smith himself fall way too far down the list. So we are going to get right into this right now, and I will start with the first play. All right, our first contrarian play for 2023 is Jonathan Taylor. Yes, the Jonathan Taylor that was the undisputed, no questions asked, #1 overall pick from the previous year. Yes, he had a bad year, an awful year, but I'm going to argue now that almost all of that was out of his control. First off, he was playing injured for the entire season, and you could clearly see that on the field. Secondly, the Colts as a team were absolutely atrocious last year in all facets of the game, coaching, offensively, defensively. So let's take a look at the devil's advocate of this year when everyone thinks they're going to be awful and see what have they done to improve from last year. Well, they hired an OC from the most efficient offense last season as their new head coach. They upgraded at the QB position in Richardson, who is very raw but very comparable to Jalen Hurts when he first came into the league, and that's who Steichen has been working with in Philly for the last 2 years. I am by no means saying that Richardson will be Jalen Hurts and the Colts offense will be the Philly offense, but I do believe they will be much improved from last year and they will be able to move the football. Moving the football will lead to more TD opportunities, and that's where JT thrives. What people are arguing is that as they are saying and assuming that Richardson's going to vulture a lot of Taylor's TDs, which he will definitely vulture some, but I argue that an improved offense with the new OC and being able to move the football is better and more advantageous than vulturing a few touchdowns. Keep in mind, Sanders had 11 TDs last year with all of those rushing touchdowns from Jalen Hurts, so Jonathan Taylor will still be able to get it done on the ground. The Colts offense also has not been good the entire time Jonathan Taylor has been there, and he's still been vastly productive. He had 11 plus TDs in 2020 and 11 plus TDs in 2021. The reality is there are very few workhorse 3-down backs in the NFL anymore, and fantasy is becoming more and more wide receiver heavy, and rightfully so, but these incredible workhorse running backs are starting to fall a little bit too far down the draft board for my liking. These guys like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor are all going in the mid to late second round now, where 3+ years ago they would all be going in the first round, no questions asked. And that is why our first contrarian play is Jonathan Taylor.
And with our second contrarian pick, I got Damien Harris of the Buffalo Bills. In 2021, Damien Harris had 15 total touchdowns and 1,000 rushing yards. Last year, Damien only had 3 touchdowns and roughly 500 rushing yards. So yes, he fell off a cliff. So I know a lot of you were going into last year expecting Damien Harris to have a big year. But with injury issues and Ramondre still in the show, we had a frustrating and disappointing season for the Harris owners. So I can see why a lot of you are going to pump the brakes and even pass up on him strictly for maybe injury concerns, or the simple fact that he's on the Buffalo Bills and they love to sling the football. Why would Buffalo bring him in? Last year, Devin Singletary had 80% of the carries at the goal line, and now that he's gone, the void needs to be filled. So I think we can assume James Cook will remain the explosive pass-catching back, and Damien Harris will fill in the void at the goal line. Buffalo probably wants to protect their investment as well. Josh Allen is a hell of a football player, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but one of the things they want to see him do less is run the football. He puts himself in very dangerous situations where you ask yourself, is he getting up? Why did he do that? Why did he fight for an extra 2 yards head first? You can limit all these injury possibilities by bringing in a guy like Damien Harris, a guy that you trust at the goal line. You hand it off and he could finish the drive. Last year, Buffalo also didn't really have a balance to their offense. I mean, last year we did see Josh Allen also have his worst statted line when it came to turnovers in the red zone. So this can limit that as well. How many times did we see the Bills line up on the 2-yard line last year for a passing play? Devin Singletary had 80% of the carries and we couldn't punch it in. Instead, we're throwing turnovers, we're throwing interceptions and fumbling the ball. We can limit that by handing the ball off to a goal line back that we trust. And before Damien got hurt last year, the Patriots were horrendous at getting the ball into the end zone, but they always had Damien Harris out there before he was injured. Buffalo has seen what Harris has done to them over the past few years, and when New England notoriously didn't want to sign him up for his second contract, the Buffalo Bills were salivating. And this is why he's our second contrarian play.
All right, our contrarian play number 3 is Keenan Allen. I have seen very few people high on Keenan Allen this year due to his injury-plagued seasons the last 2 years. He's currently going as wide receiver 19 when the previous 2 years he was drafted as a top 10 wide receiver. When he came back last year in week 11, he totaled 60 catches on 83 targets in 8 games. That's averaging over 10 targets per game. He still passes the eye test to me when he's on the field, and Herbert is always looking his way when he needs to find the open man. He finished last year with 675 yards and 4 touchdowns. Averaging that out over a full season, he would have averaged over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's the primary target on, in my opinion, an elite offense and elite QB. I know they struggled last year, but they had a bajillion injuries that really put a damper on their season. Yes, he is getting older, but he's still only 31. He once again passes the eye test for me when I watch him on the field. He still has solid separation and the ability to get open. Based on all that, what's the issue that everyone has and why no one really likes him this year and why he's falling in ADP? It, for me, is only health. That's the only justification I see for Keenan Allen falling down the draft boards. When he's on the field and healthy, he has always been a strong wide receiver 2 his entire career. If at his current ADP 36, which I honestly think that's a good value for where he's going, but if he falls later, which I have seen him going in drafts because people are so concerned about his injuries, if he falls into the 4th round and he's going below guys like McLaurin, Hopkins, Judy, I would be ecstatic to take him anywhere in the 4th round.
And with our 4th contrarian pick, we got Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now that Calvin Ridley will be activated going into the 2023 season, I'm starting to see a lot of Christian Kirk hate. Without a doubt, it's probably deserved. You are adding an elite receiver to an offense that did really well last year. So let's take a deeper dive into Jacksonville Jaguars' year last year. Everyone wanted a little bit of Kirk shares going into the draft last year. He finished the year 84 catches, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. What changes, though, when you add a true wide receiver 1 into the offense? The last time we saw Calvin Ridley, he posted a season stat line of 31 catches, 280 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he took the rest of the year off with mental health issues, and then shortly after was suspended the following year for gambling. But before all of that, in 2020, he had 90 catches for 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. As you can tell, Kirk and Ridley's best season stat lines look similar. Trevor Lawrence last year showed that he could feed multiple mouths. Kirk finished the year as a receiver 12, Zay Jones having an incredible year himself, and Evan Ingram showing out. Each of these guys had about 80 receptions, So if you do all the math, it's about 240 catches. Although we can expect some regression from the receivers in this core, I don't know that this will affect Christian Kirk more certainly. I think it will affect Zay Jones. With a guy like Calvin Ridley coming into this offense and with his ability to stretch the field, and Zay Jones is his other counterpart, I think this is going to make a very sneaky slot receiver option for Kirk. With this offense, with Lawrence showing some positive progression, defenses will have a hard time figuring out who to double on this team and if you should double anyone at all. So I really do think with Kirk averaging about 13 yards a catch, that this year is the year for him to have some bigger plays with the field opening up with weapons like Ingram, Zay Jones, and Calvin Ridley on the side of the field. So with everyone's hate towards Kirk because Ridley is joining this team, I don't think it poses that much of a threat towards his production, and I actually think he'll probably be around the same this year, 80 targets with more yards, just for the simple fact that with Calvin Ridley on the team, there's going to be a lot more open opportunities because you're going to have to watch another guy that is a deep threat. And that's why Christian Kirk is our number 4 contrarian play. And that will wrap up our Contrarian Plays video. If you guys liked what you watched or learned something new, drop a like beneath. And if you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback for the channel, drop those in the comments section below. And please don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And we can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks for stopping by.